Welcome back to the Il Today of Dallin Candland podcast. I'm here with Alessandra Guerra. I big fan of her work. She's done the How to Empower, Create, Encourage podcast for a while, and it's a fantastic podcast. And I've been wanting to have her on my show for a while. We've been talking for a pretty good amount of time. She's been a good support of the podcast for a while, and this needed to happen a long time ago. But now it's here, and I'm thankful. So thanks for coming on.
I'm so happy to be here. I just remembered, I think it's been maybe 3 years since we met online, which is wild. That's so long. So much has happened since then.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a testament that God works in mysterious ways. So I know you were talking to my brother about maybe doing art for your book or something.
Yeah.
And then somehow, some way, I just still don't really know how. You like saw some of my posts. I was Dream Chaser Dallin back then. I don't really have that moniker now, but I did at the time. And then all of a sudden we were like talking in Gmail, just sending little scriptures stuff, these long notes, and we were both sending these long notes. And that was a real blessing at the time, especially in 2020. And it's a big understanding to me that God always provides refuge in the storm, and he'll send somebody to do that, find some way to do that, and how he always has the ability to do that. And then, I started my podcast around then or something, and you had yours and I'd listened to it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then, we just talked here and there and saw each other in Zoom meetings for the Change the World Club thing that we're both in. And it just somehow sort of brought us to this moment. So it's pretty crazy though.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we met, and I love the Change Your World Club too. Like, I'm really happy that Jacob created that, because that's a phenomenal thing for people to meet and come together and have really good support system and resources to evolve and do their passion projects.
I think it's telling too, because it's an imperfect thing, and he has a vision for it that, again, is not perfect, but he is enough to keep going. And there's something that it's doing for people. I remember when he would do these little accountability calls with me in college every week, and he'd call me and be like, hey, how are things going? And I was like, what in the world? What are you doing, man? And he's like, I want to help you out. I want to help you out. And with all of this creating and stuff, we are able to reach people, and God is able to reach people through these things. And that's why I think it really is so important that we do something, because then God doesn't have any way to reach out to these people if we don't even have that means provided to do it.
And I think the part that's so heartwarming for me is that even though none of us really, all of us have a vision of what we want to attain, we don't fully have it all hashed out, and there's still some missing pieces. And that can sometimes be really disheartening and frustrating. But just having that place where we can come together and be like, okay, we all understand that we're limited in some ways, and that our plans have quite a few flaws, but we're here and we're willing to help each other and learn more together. And that has just been such a wonderful space for me, and I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. For me, last year, I felt like the puzzle was like Dallin's life is coming together, and all of a sudden it's like, let's just turn this over and start over, like completely over. That's what it felt like after I graduated from college. I was like starting my life completely over, kind of. Talk to us more about missing pieces and frustration with that.
I think for me, something that I've realized is that I wasn't planning on talking about this, but recently I realized that there's something in my past that I had kind of tried to just completely be okay with and pretend that I'm okay and that I'm great and everything's hunky-dory. And then I realized this still deeply affects me, and I haven't fully processed this. And I think there is a part of me that just is very sad or hesitant to admit this, because I want to be okay. I want to be as complete as I can. And I don't want to have to deal with these frustrations and things. But I realized this is part of the human process. There's lots of times where I want to be better at something and I'm not, and it's frustrating, and I get really sad. Yesterday, I was a little bit mean to my mom, and I felt so horrible. I'm like, this woman has literally given me so much. She has been there for me when I have been extremely depressed, when I've been suicidal. She's been my lifeline. She's been so loving. when I didn't believe in God. She was incredibly loving. She didn't pressure me or force me to believe in God. She just would share her love for me. And she never hid how she loved God. It was just like she would share that, like she would share her favorite movie or her favorite food. And she was just so accepting and so loving, and didn't ever shame me or make me feel bad for being depressed, for being suicidal, for not believing in God, for not wanting to go to church, any of that. And yesterday I was mean and I was impatient and I felt so awful, just so awful and so ashamed. And then my fiance came and he hugged me and he said, "I love you. You're just such a wonderful person." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm so mean." And he's like, "What did you just say?" He's like, "No, don't talk to yourself that way." He's like, "Let's go. We'll apologize to your mom right now." And I think just learning to talk to myself with that kind of love and compassion in those moments of struggle and that are challenging, that would change my relationship with myself dramatically.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And shout out to Jeremiah for helping out with that. He sounds like a super swell fellow. It's cool how you and him were able to recognize this opportunity to like lean a little bit more towards compassion on yourself. And that's really difficult, you know. And I think sometimes we think that these little wins aren't that big, but in reality they are. Like the difference between like, okay, I'm going to respond with anger again after I've already responded with anger before or something. It's like continuously going in this path, this direction, this weirdo direction. And you know, one comfort that's been real to me is that our direction is way more important than our speed. So like if we are really trying to get on that direction that we feel like is closer to where we feel like God wants us to be, or where we also want to be, you know, like we will definitely get in a better place. But yeah, I applaud you for that. And it's definitely difficult after something like that happens. It's difficult to do that.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned something like you could have met anger with more anger, and instead you kind of met it with compassion. I forget the technical term for this, but it's really easy to get into negative feedback loops where you do something negative and it feeds. Like if I'm mad at someone for doing something and I get mad at them, I talk mean to them, they're mean to me, and it just kind of spirals. But then to be able to just interject and be like, okay, let's be conscious and change this kind of behavior, which Jeremiah helped me to do, can be challenging, but it's totally trainable. It's completely trainable. And that's something that I'm working on, being more self-aware and kind of regulating my nervous system first a bit before responding, because there are certain things that do remind me of my childhood that do bring up some things in me. And I'm like, whoa, this is not who I am today, but this hurt little Ollie so many years ago that this is the natural defense mechanism. So that's what I'm trying to work on so hard right now.
Yeah, and I think this is something I've been working pretty hard on a little bit too, is just the inner child and letting the inner child speak. And when things do remind you of things, being like present with that and not like pushing that away, but letting that speak and letting that also direct you in your next steps.
What do you I'm just so used to hosting. I was gonna say, what do you do to help you direct those next steps? What helps you calm down though? What
I
helps
think
you take that moment?
I think there's a lot of things. One is that I I think I there's a lot of different things, but one is just reminding myself that these feelings are like valid. Like, these things are happening. And if I'm up for it, like to put it into a poem, maybe I could look at a scripture or look at something else of that nature, but just to channel it in a different direction and not channel it towards like something that I don't have control over, but to channel it towards something that is malleable, that is something I can understand. Because I actually was just talking about this with myself. I did a video game stream. I felt like I should do that. And it was kind of weird because I haven't done that in forever, but I did. But something I said in that was that your goal is not to understand God's plan. Like you can't do that. Your goal is, like, at least right now, it's going to take time. Your goal is to trust. And so I trust that Dallin is a work in progress, and that he's a work in progress that is worth working on, and that that's going to look differently at different points. So I think a lot of it is just saying and reminding yourself that these feelings are valid, and also reminding yourself what your values are, and just kind of sticking to that.
I like that. It sounds like you're very self-aware and practice a lot of intentional mindfulness.
I certainly try to. I want to tell you about this, actually. So it was a little bit ago, I think it was yesterday, actually. I had the thought after a run to do some meditation. And I've done meditation before, where I imagine things, and that helps me like ground myself in it. So what I imagined this time was I imagined that was like this plane that was like flying, and when I breathed in, I was flying up. When I was breathing out, I was flying down. And so it was crazy, because I was like, I was just like, and then I was like, and I just imagined myself like flying through the sky and just going so deep, and then just imagining it flying all the way back up. It's been a weird thing. I call it the breath plane technique. I just came up with that out of nowhere, I guess. I believe it was a gift from God, but it has made me think, because there's been a couple times, like while playing basketball yesterday, where I just kind of bring myself back, and it's like, just imagine the plane flying up, and then imagining it flying down, and then holding your breath is obviously just like staying on an even trail. But for me, it's kind of interesting, because I like games, I like video games, I like those kind of things. So when I say I want to play breath plane, that is my meditation mantra. And that sounds, that mantra is not the right word, but that's like that's a signal to myself, and giving myself those loving signals is all about helping you get in the right direction. Like with roads, you have all these different things, and sometimes it can really frustrate and confuse a person. But when you have those clear signals that you're on the right track, and you're going in the right place, and that you're loved, then that really helps build confidence, because love and confidence go hand in hand.
It really does. And this is extremely important, I've realized, for my relationship with myself, and then with your significant other and your families. There's something that Jeremiah and I, a boundary that we committed to in the very early stages of dating, when we were talking about the kind of marriage that we wanted, the kind of relationship that we wanted. And something was, we want to be with people who are uplifting and kind. And so we made a very strong boundary to always be uplifting and kind. And if we were in a disagreement and we couldn't do that, then to say, okay, you know what, I need some time to process, and I'll come back when I can talk to you really kindly. And that has been huge in helping us navigate any conflict or anything that has come up that could have been a big issue. So for us, just that commitment alone, it's like, we've never yelled at each other. We've never really swore at each other, or done anything that would demean or belittle the other person. And that has been a huge thing for me to build trust in that, to know, okay, this conflict has come up, or this situation has come up that's scary and that's uncomfortable, but we're going to talk about it, and this is going to be okay for us to talk about. And something he has done an excellent job is to show commitment even in conflicts. Not the, I'm going to leave because I'm scared. Yeah, he's scared, but he's not going to leave. He's going to show up and do things. Whereas that's something that I need to work on, right? Because my response to that has always kind of been to like, oh, I need to withdraw so I can feel safe. So it's amazing to me how with the right people, you can build trust and you can become better. And they create these support systems that allow you to sustain these healthy habits, and that really support you in unlearning unhealthy habits that harm the relationship.
Yeah. So the work of reinforcing somebody is about helping them get to where they want to go. And that includes helping uplift them towards something they like doing, but also means helping them let go of things that they ought not to be doing. And it's so interesting, because you see this with, and I know it's talked about in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. You see it with I think of like doing like track in high school. It's like, okay, well, we run, we do this, and on these days, instead of doing this, we do that. And it's so cool because it's like, at least the track team I was on, it's like we want what's best for you. We're committed to this path, and we can help you stay on it. And a lot of really beautiful things will come from it, even if it doesn't come immediately. But you will have help, you'll have place, you'll have safety here.
Yeah, I do love how you can build those things. You can build that resistance. You can build these habits, and you can build more trust with that person to know they're there for me. They're going to help me with these things. And they're also going to call me into accountability. Yes, just yesterday, Jeremiah, I got mad at Deanna and she was being a bit curt. And I said, I don't like that you're being a bit curt. And then she apologized. Then I apologized. She explained why she was stressed. And then Jeremiah said to me, because he had said to her, I'm not offended, but I think you need to ask Ali for forgiveness because I think she's sad about that. And so she did. And then I kissed her hand. We kissed hands while all this stuff happened. Then Jeremiah says to me, you were mad with her for being curt, but you're being curt right now too. I was like, you're right. I'm sorry. And I'm really grateful to have a partner that will very gently call me into accountability, to be saying, hey, I know this is the kind of person you want to be. So let's do those things who you want to be, and let's release the things that you don't want to be. And that has been a huge support to me.
That's cool. Yeah, for anybody that hasn't listened to Ellie's fantastic podcast, she interviews people, she shares things that her and those around her are learning about relationships, life, and it's really interesting and something I'm excited for, to continue to hear her perspectives on these things as she continues to develop and grow in them. But I love what you talked about, Ellie, with the calling into accountability, because that is such a big part of that. And then it's cool when you have like a podcast interview, like let's say, when I have you back on in the future, if there's something that you said in this one that was like, I would like to do that, then even if I don't bring it up, there's still the accountability that the conversation is happening. And I think the important thing, and it's something I learned while being on my mission, is that it's important that you come with the intent to provide support. There's not the intent to provide criticism, because there's already plenty of criticism in the world. We don't need more of it.
Absolutely. And that's something my mom teaches. So she's a transformational coach, and with her clients, or whether that's an individual, a company, or an organization, she will teach them the biggest thing to change is to observe ourselves from a place of love and acceptance. If we observe ourselves with judgment, we are going to feel so ashamed that we will not be able to create sustaining change. For us to create sustainable change, we have to love and understand and accept ourselves. Okay, Ali, why did I respond that way yesterday to my mom? Keep in mind, I'm mortified that I did this for the reasons I explained, right? She was so loving to me, literally my lifeline. And yesterday I was thinking, I spoke to her this way. Like, I can't be more patient when she didn't understand something. Why did I react that way? What was happening there? Oh, I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel valued. We've had this conversation so many times. In my mind, the message was, she's not listening to me. She doesn't care about me. She doesn't value me. So I got angry. And then it's like, okay, I understand where that was coming from. Now, is that true? No, mom loves me so much. What's true? She's dealing with 2 weddings, 1 week apart from each other. The wedding is one of them is next week. Like, she's got so much on her mind. She's got her agenda out. Like, she's doing everything she can to listen. Also, we're speaking in English, which is a different language. And even though she speaks English really well, like, sometimes I get confused in Spanish. And even though that's my mother tongue, I get confused. There's different phrases that I don't understand, new slang that comes up. So I use different terminology that she wasn't used to. So yeah, so understanding myself to reduce that shame, to be able to say, okay, I understand where this was coming from. This is not true what I'm thinking. Let me talk to my mom and let me apologize. And to be able to have that conversation with her where she's so loving and so kind. And she says, yes, I understand where you were coming from. And I am listening to you, and I do love you. There's just a lot going on. Everybody's talking at once. I was like, yep, that makes sense. Literally everybody was having so many different conversations. She's like, I couldn't hear what you were saying. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
It's interesting, and we could go like every single time you talk, Allie, there's just so much like truth. There's so much like value and stuff. It's like we could go all these different directions. It's like, okay. But it sort of makes me think of like times where we're having a good conversation with somebody or a not good conversation with somebody, and there's static all like every other conversation, even if there's words, it's kind of like it's all this it's all
Yeah.
noise. It's not adding, or it's probably not benefiting the conversation. And so if you're trying to have a really clear conversation with somebody and now you're listening more to this other conversation that's happening, now we're really starting to like get a little bit confused. And I think that's a lot of what's happening today is that God's trying to reach out to people, he's trying to speak to people, and maybe people have way too many things going on. Speak to about how you've been able to make time for God in your life as far as like hearing his voice, trusting him, things of that nature.
This is such an excellent question. So personally have depression and anxiety, and I have trauma. These are big hindrances sometimes to feeling the spirit, or to even feel any desire to want to connect with people, if that makes sense. The primary desire is like, okay, let me stay here with myself in this own world where I feel slightly safe, where I feel safer than I would out there. Now, this is really contradictory because a lot of what I do is dedicated to helping other people and being around a bunch of other people. And that may be because of what goes on in my inner world. And I don't want people to feel unsafe, and I want to help them, right? Because I love trauma therapy. I go to trauma therapy, and that's eventually I'm gonna be a counselor for families and marriages. And I just really believe in that, and I'm really grateful to do that. But I'm also very there's a lot of things that I have to heal as well, and I'm very conscious of that. So with that being said, to hear God's voice, I have to do things to help me feel right with myself first, because otherwise I'm in such a dark state that I cannot hear him. So I know that I need to sleep properly, at least 8 hours to be okay. I know I need to drink water. I know that I need to eat healthy. If I eat healthy and cook for myself, I feel great. On days that I'm feeling out of it and I order like fast food, I feel worse. Like that does nothing for me. I know I need to work out. That helps me release endorphins, do cardio, hit the boxing, go to the gym. All that stuff helps me so much. Now, do I do this all the time? No. But this past month, I have been dedicated to doing that because I want to feel more connected with myself and thus be able to be more connected with God and those around me. So, assuming I've done all of those key things, then what I do is I do love reading the scriptures and just learning. You know, the New Testament has so many great stories about Christ and how he's ministering and what his character is like. The Book of Mormon has so many wonderful stories about that as well, and how people changed completely through learning about Christ. And I love that. There's lots of stories in the Book of Mormon too where they didn't believe, but they believed because of the words of their fathers or their mothers. And that reminds me of me, where I didn't believe, but my mom was so loving and so kind that I was curious one day, and I knelt down and I prayed, is there a God? And that started this whole wonderful thing. So that's something key. And then my probably favorite thing is going to the Temple of Jeremiah. We go about every other week. Lately, we've been really into doing sealings, proxy sealings together to prepare to be sealed. And just the spirit that we feel there is amazing. The realness of families getting sealed for time and all eternity. Getting into the celestial room and praying there and feeling so much warmth and love there. Especially during times where things are so busy and there's so much going on, and feeling that peace. So I guess to simplify that, it would be first doing things that help me feel connected to myself so that I can hear God's voice, because sometimes it gets too loud in my own head and too scary and overwhelming that I can't hear it. And then doing things that invite the spirit. So that can be serving others, that can be being kind, that can be helping the family, that also, and very particularly, would be reading the scriptures, learning more about him, going to his house, honoring my covenants. Anything that helps honor covenants, any promises that I've made to God, really helps with that.
It's beautiful. And there's clarity that comes from honoring covenants, whether it's with God, whether it's with another person, and that helps to build the relationship. That helps you to understand your part in it. So I just love that so much. What's kind of up next for you, Ali? What are you excited for? Because I mean, there's obviously the wedding. Everybody, Ali is getting married in 2 weeks, and her sister Diana is getting married next week, which is crazy. I cannot imagine your mom. I'll be sending prayers for you guys to follow that. But
Thanks
what
so
else
much.
are you?
We
Yeah, what
need
else are you
them.
exciting for?
So I actually have not published a podcast episode since September, which is wild to me. I did a podcast episode earlier this week with Serena. I haven't published it just yet. We talked about trauma and the impact of trauma on people, indicators of a trauma English, of a trauma bond, and a few other things. We just delved into a bunch of stuff. So I'm super excited for that. The next thing for me is to delve more into that work again, to resume podcasting, interviewing people, and getting this knowledge out there, because I want people to have more resources for mental wellness. And I'm going to change and shift how I've been doing Instagram. I haven't touched that in a long time as well, just because I've been so busy. But I want to have my Instagram page dedicated to teaching people basically things that I've learned about in school, and everything that I keep learning, keep posting that. Like, one cool thing that I learned is the difference between adaptive and maladaptive behaviors. Adaptive behaviors are things that help you and serve you and have a purpose. Maladaptive behaviors are behaviors that helped you at one point in your life to survive, but then no longer serve you in this current state. So back in my childhood, something that helped me was not asking for help and figuring things out on my own. At this point in time, that no longer serves me, because I have a family. I have, my fiance. I can't create a healthy relationship if I don't ever ask for help, and my guard is constantly up. So just everything that I learned, just putting it on there and just having that be a free resource for people. I'm also looking for something meaningful in my career. I want my next job that I accept to be really conducive to my goal of eventually being a counselor for marriages and families, and just helping people with that. And so I've been very selective about where I'm applying to, also finding a home for us to live, and setting habits and behaviors that sustain the kind of marriage we want to have, sustain the kind of person I want to be. And then a personal goal is keep doing the things that help me feel good with myself and help me feel grounded, which is the things that I mentioned before.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love all that. And I wish you the best of luck with that. I'll say one thing that blows my mind is how God is so eager to help us to discover these new things about ourselves. And even the past couple of days, like the breath plane, and there's other super dumb stuff. It's like, I love this. This is great. Everybody else can think this is dumb. I love this. This is awesome. I will keep talking about this. This is fun. But he's always able to do that kind of stuff. And if we're willing to trust him, then he can bring all these things out to us. And there's books that will completely change my perspective and help me tons that have not been written yet. And the same thing goes for other people, and the same thing goes for things you're doing, and so I'm just excited for the people you'll continue to impact, the opportunities you'll continue to just completely just bloom in, and how Jeremiah can help you and lift you up, kind of like Ariel. I think it's Ariel, right? Where he picks her up and or whatever. It's been a while since I saw Little Mermaid, but yeah, just metaphorically and physically. So I'm excited, and emotionally, all that stuff. So I'm excited for you. And yeah, thank you for what shares. Is there anything else you'd share with the listeners, and how do we get in contact with you?
Yeah, I think one thing that I'd love to share is the importance of building a relationship with ourselves, and really understanding who it is that we are and what makes us happy, and that there is a lot of ways to explore that. And when we do know that, we will be empowered to create the life that we want, the reality and the world that we want. We have that power in us because we are children of God, and we have that wonderful gift of creation in us. And a lot of times, if we run into scenarios or realities where we don't really like what we're experiencing with them, it's because there's something in us that we need to work on. something in us is creating those realities. If we see patterns, that's an indicator that there's some healing work for us to do. And to, yeah, please check me out on Instagram and check out my podcast. I love to hear with you guys. There's lots of times, or hear from you guys. There's lots of times that I will have stories on where people can ask me questions, and sometimes I'll make podcasts around that. I'm also going to make reels, and I'll also answer them.
Yeah, she's definitely worth keeping an eye on, guys. Like, seriously, if you like, seriously, some of the times like she'll just speak and it's just like, it's pretty mind-blowing. I think it speaks to your journey. I think it speaks to what you prioritize, what you allow in your life, Allie. So then when you speak, that stuff comes out, and it's great. It's beautiful. So I just love how you're doing that and sharing the gifts that God has given you, and continuously looking and for more, and continuing to grow and everything. And yeah, we'll just have that in the show notes. And thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I love your podcast. I love listening to it, and I am grateful for the work that you're doing and that we're friends.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm just really thankful, because in the beginning it can be a little rocky at times, but it's getting better. So I appreciate you.
You've got an important voice, and I'm really happy that you're using it.
Thanks a bunch. You too, Allie. Thank you.